I'd love to introduce our next conversation, Taking the Leap, Career Pivoting in the 21st Century. Roberta Schmidt is the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Project Manager for Talent Acquisition at Collins Aerospace. In her role, she partners with business leaders and members of the human resources community to ensure the organization is bringing in top talent from diverse and underrepresented populations in order to create an equitable and inclusive process for all. Her role allows her, to combine her passion for social justice with her skills in talent acquisition operations. Inspired by Erica Jong's famous quote, "If you don't risk anything, you risk even more," Roberta has taken leaps into the unknown with her career pivots that have each made her stronger professionally. Welcome, Roberta. Now, joining Roberta in conversation, we have Dr. Webster, who is a senior project engineer in systems engineering at Collins Aerospace, a division of Raytheon Technologies. She is a strong proponent of DE&I. Dr. Webster received a United Technologies Excellence Award for her efforts in recruiting diverse talent in 2020. And in March 2021, she addressed all business units of Raytheon Technologies at the first of a four-part discussion, Why Diversity Matters. She also spoke to the Collins Talent Acquisition team on the same topic in June 2021. And in March 2020, she received the Inspirational Woman Award from Women in Aerospace ERG. So welcome, Dr. Webster. Now, moderating this conversation, we have Amy Carlotto, who is the Enterprise Sales Director at Power to Fly. Take it away, and thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you, Mariella. I'm so excited for this conversation. And we're going to dive in because this is just a really fascinating topic for myself. I have the pleasure of working with Roberta on a more regular basis. And then Dr. Webster, I took a peek at your LinkedIn and I'm super fascinated. So if it's okay, I would love to start with you. Tell us a little bit about your story. Like, you're the definition of career pivots. And so would love to just kind of hear a little bit from your background.
Yeah, so a lot of people know my background. If you've been to my LinkedIn, a lot of it's on there. There's now a story on there that is a feature from the Rockford area where I currently live. So my story starts out that, as a child, I was interested in engineering, but I was kind of steered away because my father thought that I should go into the medical field and be a doctor, and that's what he wanted me to be. He wanted to see me become a doctor. And so I was steered down that field, and I did go down that path. I attended Xavier University of Louisiana, and then I went on to go to dental school at University of Tennessee and pursued that career. However, there's, comes a point in your life and you reevaluate things, and you just wonder, are you happy, because it was like dentistry was chosen for me. I didn't choose it. And so when you evaluate things and you want to say, am I happy? What is going to make me happy? I started to think back and say, well, what did I like? As a child, I loved math and science. Those were the areas that I excelled in. And everyone knows engineering is directly related to math and science. So I didn't really intend to probably fully endelve myself into engineering, but I started to take an interest, went to speak to some people at a university and ended up pursuing that. And so now I find myself at Collins Aerospace as an engineer. And so that's been a great career pivot for me.
That is amazing. And then Roberta, you made a career pivot a little bit by chance and fueled by the pandemic. So loved for you to share with our audience today how you pivoted.
Oh, as soon as I can get the mute button off, right? Yes. So I would say that throughout my career, Amy, I've had a few career pivots. I started in the nonprofit sector and made the jump into talent acquisition back in 2007, 2008, and had a few opportunities to kind of refine my career. But with the onset of the pandemic, I had the fantastic opportunity, and I look at it as an opportunity to really further refine what it was that I wanted to do with my career and how I needed my personal passions to truly align with my career aspirations. So I'm here to speak to that today. And now, going from being a recruiter and a team leader of recruiters and in client services, now I'm able to really focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how that impacts our talent acquisition processes. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, thank you both for sharing. Dr. Webster, I'd love to hear, a question that we have is around kind of preparing yourself emotionally for taking that career leap. So you're going to dental school, you're committed to that, and then you kind of have that inkling of being an interest in engineering. So what were some of the steps that you took to be kind of emotionally ready?
So I think when you're taking steps to make a change, it's good to have a good support system. Because you have to have people that are going to support you and support that change, because change is uncomfortable. We all know that. So I think having a thought out plan, people that know me will know that I'm a planner. I like to plan things out. So you kind of look at where you are now and where you want to go. And you kind of figure out what's the ways to get there. So I think having that support, knowing that you have people that support you, is the first step. But then another key piece is knowing where you want to go and what steps you need to take to get there. So if there's something that you're interested in that you think, well, I kind of know something about that field, but I'm not sure, find someone in that field. LinkedIn is a great way to find someone that you may not personally know, and you can connect with them. Ask, we live in the age of Zoom now. So it doesn't matter where someone's located. You can say, hey, I see you're in this area. I'm kind of looking to go into that area. Can we set up a Zoom or, have a quick chat and find out where you're going? Because you want to know from that person's perspective what that career is like, because you want to know what's important to you. For me, it's important to have the culture of the company and to have a good work-life balance. So you have to figure out what things matter to you, and then figure out, do those things align with that career path? Some careers are more challenging. Some companies are more challenging. So I would say making sure that you have a good path set up, know where you're going, find someone that you can connect with, network with, and learn how you also can maybe transfer your current skills. Sometimes you're in a job and you want to go into something completely different and may not realize that your current skills may be transferable to something that you really enjoy. So having that conversation with someone in that field may help you connect those dots.
Yeah. And you bring up those skills, maybe looking at it from a different angle. In today's market and today's jobs that we're in, and things and technology is moving so fast, like, why do you feel like it's so important, or why are those skills important and critical in today's world?
Today's world, the skills are important because when you're going and you're looking at profession, the first thing a company is going to look at when they look at your resume is what skills do you have and you can bring to them, to their company. So your skills are very important, whatever they may be. Your skills may be more technical or less technical. Some people may shine when they're around people, and that's a skill that people don't realize, because a lot of people are very introverted. You may not think it, but I'm considered an introvert. And so you may not realize skills you have that can benefit a company, and they may see that as a benefit and you may not. So I think it's important to always highlight your skills. If you feel like your resume isn't strong enough, connect with a resume writer, have them review your resume and highlight those skills that you think are going to, make you stand out versus other candidates.
Yeah. So it sounds like, go ahead, Roberta. Yeah, jump in.
No, I was just going to say, in the case of so many who were kind of impacted via COVID, which was kind of my experience, but it also takes me back to the skills that I needed when I was going through earlier career pivots in my career, moving from the nonprofit sector to the private sector. I needed to be aware of what learning I needed to get in order to move forward into the next level. I had to be aware of that. But also, I think about those quote unquote accidental career pivots, that struck so many of us through the pandemic, especially in the early stages of the pandemic. I'm looking at my wall at the LLC certificate that I got, and it's dated March 11th, 2020, because I was ready to start my own business as a consultant in DE&I and talent acquisition. March 11th, 2020 was, I think, 11 days prior to my state going on lockdown. So I had just started this business and I immediately had to completely pivot my outlook, and that to me is like a really good example of that quote of accidental career pivot. But to Dr. Webster's point, I call her Osyria, but to Dr. Webster's point, because she's earned the title in many ways, it's important for us when we go through those quote unquote accidental pivots, where situations outside of our control can happen, that we remain humble. I had to remain humble and realize that this was the opportunity actually that I had been looking for. I knew that I wanted to make a change from what I was doing previously. The pandemic just kind of sped it up for me. I had to feed my family. I had to ensure that my spouse and I were taken care of, because I am the primary breadwinner in the household. But at the same time, I had to ensure, and this was something I was seeking with this new business, that work aligned with where my passions were and what filled my soul, which had been absolutely missing for several years prior. So that to me was what I needed to do. And I kind of needed to listen to the universe at that point. You're not going to start your own business. You're not, you have to remain agile during those times.
Exactly. And there was a question about the idea between an accidental versus an intentional.
Right.
But it sounds like from both of you, even if it is accident or even if it's fueled by something outside and, something that we're not prepared for, like a pandemic, you still took very intentional steps to get you there. You still did things like researched and you were on that path to begin with. Well, thank you, audience, for adding some questions. I want to make sure we have a ton of questions already, but I would love to kind of jump into a audience question. What are some pitfalls of and things to avoid when transitioning into a new career?
So from a talent acquisition perspective, I would say a pitfall is walking in or coming into the position and presenting yourself as knowing more than you do. Okay. Humility is important. Learning agility is exceptionally important in any new role. At the same time, you have to balance that with the ability to share the learning that you currently have, the competencies that you currently have. Every position that I have had has been an expansion of the positions that I've had in the past, so a career expansion, but has required me to remain exceptionally agile and to ensure that, and for me to ensure that I had gone out and done my research. I think that that's exceptionally important.
Yeah.
For me, I think a pitfall is, to understand patience. If you're pivoting from one career to another, it's not going to happen overnight.
No.
It's a process, and it's going to take time. And, you just need that one door to open and be the right opportunity. And it's not going to happen right away. It could happen a few months, but stay the course. And I think, when people want something, we want things to happen overnight. We're in this age that we want to, I think I want to do a career. I think my resume is great. Why isn't anyone picking me up? I think it's important to stay patient because things happen when they're supposed to happen. And that's definitely something I have learned. And then, as you talk about those intentional or unintentional things, so you never really realize what doors may open, so yes, I was like, okay, I want to do, engineering, but coming from the healthcare side to now a corporate side, I knew nothing about the corporate world until now. And now that I'm on this side, I'm like, that's interesting. And that's interesting. And so, it's now opening up my eyes to things that I had never even thought about before. So don't think that this engineering is my end all be all, because I have some other things in mind too. So, you're always learning and growing. You never really know where you'll end up in life, but you just have to be patient and know that it'll happen eventually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dr. Webster, it sounds like you are the forever student, and it's so interesting learning, which I think is fascinating. All right, so there's a great question, and you know what? As coming from a family of teachers, I know that I've heard this as people I've talked to and family members have pivoted their career. But are you finding that teachers have been stigmatized during this time or transition? They've seen some positions being kind of indicated that way, and maybe along with the ideas, you know, what are some advice to teachers out there that are looking to use their skill sets and pivot during this time?
Mm-hmm. I think it's a question that I hadn't necessarily thought about prior to this presentation. So I'm not sure that I'm going to have a well-baked response, Amy. I'm just going to tell you that right now. However, in talent acquisition, we see candidates that come to us from a variety of different backgrounds. I have multiple teachers in my family, and I know that there have been some extreme stigmas placed on the teaching profession during the COVID pandemic, and challenges that they have never seen before in their long careers in teaching. There are programs that exist that I would highly recommend that are specifically aimed at people who want to pivot their career, and they focus on where the person is starting and help them identify roles that they want to move into. I would be happy to talk to this individual more one-on-one following the presentation, if that's possible. But I don't know if it's appropriate for me to throw names of organizations out in this setting, but I would be more than happy to provide that information outside of this venue. There's one in particular that comes to mind that I think would be really beneficial. And that kind of leads me into another point, that the opportunities to look up information on career pivots is astounding in this technical age. If you just Google, how do I make a career pivot? Oh my gosh, it's astounding at how much information exists out there. But yeah, I having known teachers who have been impacted significantly through this process, both professionally, but also personally, because it's a vocation, it's not just a job. I can say that I would be more than happy to speak to, in a more one-on-one basis, some of the programs out there.
Thank you, Roberta, for offering that. And, you know, one of the things that just a small suggestion is that having a family members that did pivot, you know, I know somebody that pivoted from being a teacher and then going into an ed tech company. And that experience was extremely valuable. And so it was a good transition, but, you know, pivoting a career, but not an industry per se, and people that maybe aren't aware that some of those companies are out there and looking for people that have the background.
Yep. You bring up a really good point with that, Amy. I am still working, for instance, within talent acquisition, but it is more focused. So when we're looking at career pivots, I think of it also as career refinement, or, you know, I remember the days when the expected evolution of one's career was upward mobility. You move from an individual contributor to a manager, to a director, to a VP, to, you know, that is not the case anymore. And if there's one thing that the pandemic has taught so many job seekers, including myself, it's that life is too short to follow that path in all ways. Those moves sideways within your industry that fill that gap for you are just as valuable than anything, and sometimes in my case, even more than a position that would put you on the Forbes 500, you know. It's that emotional security that comes about when you know that you're aligned with the job that is meaningful to you.
Yeah. And that brings up a great point. Dr. Webster, you know, you mentioned you went to school to be a dentist, and then you kind of had that thought. What are some things that you did? You mentioned some research, but are there other things that you did to get comfortable with the idea of pivoting your career to something that was really, you know, a complete going in a different direction, but really something that you were passionate about from a young age?
I think aligning your passion with your career is what gets you there. You know, so I went after something, you know, we know engineering is very heavily math-based. I chose electrical engineering, which is very math-based. And so having that pivot to something that that I had a passion for, math, is where I think, you know, helped me. and got me to that place and make that decision. But like I said, it's evaluating your life and evaluating what you want out of life, and what will make you happy. There's a lot of people who are in careers right now and they feel like they're stuck. But if you're uncomfortable, then that's a sign, and like Roberta said, you can get on the internet now. When I was a child, we didn't have Google. I couldn't, pull out my phone or get on a computer and Google, like, what is an engineer? How do I become one? It was like, I didn't have that, So I think this day and age makes it really easy. And there's so many careers. I mean, you can just look at what's going on with the Great Resignation. People are leaving places that they're not happy with to pursue things, to pursue what their passions and what makes them happy. So I think, that's very important. I think you have to align what you want out of life and how you want your life to be, and as my mom always tells me, she was like, as long as you have breath in your body, you can make a change. When that day comes, we can't make any more changes. But right now, it's small changes, and you don't have to do it drastically because your life may not be set up for a drastic change. You might have to just do little things to get you to where you want to be.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be drastic and painful, right? It can be over a period of time.
Yes. All right. So this question might be a little bit, Roberta, focused from your talent acquisition lens, but what advice do you give? You see job postings, it's like 5 to 10 years of experience. And then, what advice do you give someone when they don't have the experience, when they're reading the job description?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I have multiple different answers for that. Number one, there will be a list of basic qualifications in order to be considered for the role. And those truly are hard and fast qualifications at the end, that the hiring manager is looking for somebody with significant competency within a specific skill set. I would be also watching the preferred qualifications. Okay, that's just as important. The manager has placed an emphasis on those. I would say that I would also challenge my colleagues within talent acquisition to be in turn challenging the hiring managers. Is this something that is truly required for the role that you're posting, or will you be interested in speaking with people who have that learning agility, who have displayed this competency for software development, just maybe not with the exact platform that you utilize here at this company. So I challenge my fellow talent acquisition professionals to have those hard conversations with managers who might not know that there's an option. I would like to say apply anyway, because it just understand that individual companies might have different policies. You might get that automatic rejection letter, but you might not. Okay. Someone might see your resume and say, hey, I'm not looking for this skill set for this position. But by applying, you are now in that company's resume database and can be reviewed for other positions and contacted for other positions. So I always say, be reasonable, be realistic. If it requires 10 years experience in software engineering, it's not something that I'm going to apply for because I have 0 years experience in software engineering. But I'm going to maybe look for other roles that could be a stretch for me, but I have some experience within that field. And that way it gets me into the resume database for that company and recruiters can watch for me. Mm-hmm. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And advice that I always give, if asked, is that there's nonprofits out there in the world. So if you don't have a specific background, let's say that you want to get into a certain career, nonprofits are always looking for volunteers, and that's easy.
Yes.
It's hard sometimes when you need a job or you want to go, but that will allow you the opportunity to do something in a part-time small basis that you could put on your resume. And then Dr. Osyria, as you mentioned, you kind of referred to as, using a resume writer, maybe someone that will highlight those skills that are transferable. Is that something that you had used when you were looking to kind of take your first jump?
No, and I think a lot for me too, my career choices are really educational based. So you really have to have, that engineering degree to be an engineer, and you really have to have that dental degree. So I think it also depends on careers. You can't say I want to, be an engineer and yet you don't have an engineering degree. I think in my case, I didn't focus on a resume writer because my education kind of spoke for itself just because of my career choice.
Yeah, such a good point. You both said you can't be a software engineer, you can't be a dentist without the background, but there are steps that you can take to get there. All right. Well, in the last few minutes, I would love for you, if someone's listening to this and pondering the idea, what's maybe each of you like one or two things just to make sure that, you're inspiring the audience to take their own leap?
Just take the step. It could take longer than you're anticipating, but take the leap. I knew that I wasn't happy with what I was doing before. I started an LLC. Yeah, it didn't work out because, COVID, but it led me to something that was beyond what I could have done on my own in such a short time. Take the leap. Be aware of your financial security. I recommend, if you're risk averse, that you do a lot of research first, and make sure that you have, if you're going to take a leap that could potentially impact you financially, have a few months of savings banked up so that you can make that leap safely. But take the risk. It's truly worth it.
Great advice.
Yeah. Yeah, Roberta and I were having some conversation a few days ago before, about this. And so, like she said, take the leap, do it. I mean, we always feel like we want to do something, but you never really know what you can do till you put yourself out there and you do it, And like she said, take the time. And I said, it's not going to happen overnight. It may take a while, but the thing is, if you don't start now, a year from now, you're going to say, if I had tried, I'd at least know where I am now. So don't put off tomorrow what you can do today. I know we've heard that before, but it's so true in so many different aspects. Just take the leap and try it, because you really don't know where you'll end up.
Yes. Yeah. And no one knows, like, Roberta, when you were planning, you didn't realize that, what the world was going to bring us. So that's such great advice.
And join networks like Power to Fly. I can't tell you how important this network is to me, both professionally and personally. So I'll end it there.
Oh, a great way to wrap it up. Thank you, Roberta. Thank you, Dr. Webster. I have enjoyed this conversation, and for everyone out there, I hope you enjoyed and got some great advice from the talk today.
Thank you all.
Thank you.